Alright, so today we're going to talk about cover 2 principles. Let me fix my diagram right here. So I got this little thing set up here. Alright, so cover 2 is one of the simplest zone coverage looks you can play. You can play man coverage on defense, right? You can play man coverage, which means you have a man assigned to each receiver, more or less. Or you can play zone coverage, which means you got certain guys. X's are my defenders, and the O's are my guys on offense. You can have certain zones for each defender they cover, right? So you don't have an assigned man to mark. You just have a certain section of the field, right? This is our field, right? And this is our defense, this is our offense, right? So you have man coverage versus zone coverage. One of the simplest types of zone coverage you can play is called cover 2. You have things like cover 2, cover 3, cover 4. Sometimes you can even mix in a bit of cover 6, which we'll get into much later, in a different video. But for now, this video is going to be mainly focused on cover 2. What cover 2 means is that you're going to have 2 people in the backfield, in the back of the defense right here, that are going to basically cover 2 sections. So you're basically in the deep half of the field, right? Let's say you're trying to get 10 yards to move the sticks, right? To move the chains. In the deep part of the field, which is beyond the first down marker, just beyond it, right? You're going to divide into 2 sections. This guy's got this half, this guy's got this half, theoretically, right? So let me erase this for now. That's what cover 2 means. Now, usually you're going to be rushing 4 guys. You could rush 3, theoretically, if you wanted to. Some teams play a 4-3, some teams play a 3-4, which we will talk about either in a later video, or I've already, I think I've already done that video. But, so if we're rushing 4 people and we have 2 guys on the back, that means, first off, let's take the 4 out, right? So these are my 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 rushers. These are my exits right down here. They're trying to get at the quarterback. This is my running back. You got 11 people on the offense, 11 people on the defense. You got 11 per team on the field at a time. And so we have our 4 guys. So 11 minus 4 is 7, right? So we got 7 other guys that we can cover the field with to try to stop the offense from gaining yards, right? Well, in cover 2, since we have, like we spoke about earlier, there's going to be 2 guys up here. That leaves 5 guys. Now that means we're basically flooding the middle of the field, because these guys are just beyond the first down marker, right? Beyond 10 yards. That means everything within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage of the offense, right? Everything within 10 yards is stacked with 5 guys. We got 5 guys lined across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll explain what these names mean a bit later, and their definitions. So we got 5 guys in the middle. So if you think about it logically, that means that we got the middle of the, or should I say, intermediate level of the yards that the offense needs to cover. We've got that covered pretty well. We basically have taken away everything underneath, so to speak. That's what we call everything underneath, right? That's within 10 yards. So we've got 5 guys covering this spot, this area of the field. Well, that also means that we have not many guys deep. So this type of coverage, cover 2, its strength is in the intermediate levels, right? In the middle, right? Within 10 yards. But its weakness, where it's vulnerable, is deep, is beyond the first down marker, right? So if the offense, the QB gets the ball, right? Let's say this guy goes deep on the outside. Look at this huge gap. Like, it's hard. You got 2 guys trying to cover the width of the entire football field, and each of them are responsible for half a field. So if this guy's pretty fast, this hole is going to be exploited, right? That's the main weakness. And if you play cover 2 correctly, and your communication is on point, your execution is on point, you know, it's not going to be that big a problem, because you can manage these types of deep balls. You can adjust to them. So that's what we're going to get into today. So I just want to go through the positions real quick. Just a quick recap, right? We got a quarterback here. We got 5 offensive linemen, running back that's flanking him on his right, and we got a simple alignment right here. 2 guys on each side. You can say tight ends, wide receivers, whatever you want to call them. It's called a 2x2 set, because we have 2 people on the left side, 2 people on the right side. It's 2x2, right? That's for the offense, right? Now for the defense, we're basically cover 2, since it's a defensive principle, defensive, I don't want to call it a play. but it's a defensive concept. We're going to basically be focusing on how to play cover two from the defense's standpoint. So we're not really going to talk about that much. We're not going to talk about the offense that much. We're basically going to talk about what we have to do on the defensive side of the ball to prevent certain plays from happening and prevent the offense from exploiting our weakness, which are these deep areas right here. So now on the defensive side, right, we got two safeties up here. These are the people that are supposed to be responsible for the deeper areas of the field. That's what safeties are, right? We got a free safety, strong safety. We'll go into that a little bit later, maybe in another video. We got two cornerbacks, which are going to be the guys, usually in man, they're going to be the guys locking up each receiver. So they're going to be the guys that are actually staying with these guys. Then you also have three linebackers, right? We're going to have the Mike linebacker, which is the middle linebacker, middle inside linebacker, depending on if you're playing a 4-3 defense, a 3-4 defense, some things I've touched on in the past as well. We have a Will linebacker, which is a weak side linebacker, and a Sam linebacker, which is a strong side linebacker, the strong side outside linebacker, a weak side outside linebacker, right? All right, so now that we've gone through that, let's get straight into the types of ways to play cover two, right? Like I mentioned, let's start off with this simple concept. Like I mentioned earlier, right? We have the underneath section, underneath areas covered. We got 5 guys. They're all stacked in here. So if these guys try to come across, we got that whole thing covered, right? So our weaknesses are in the deep areas, deep to the outside too. Because the safeties, these guys up here, they don't want to go all the way and be stretched, because that's probably the hardest part for them, to cover the width, go from boundary to boundary, right? So the offense is going to try to exploit that going up. The main thing the cornerbacks, these defenders, got to do to help out their safeties is, if it's hard for them to get to the boundaries, you're going to want to try to shrink the boundaries, which means shrink the field. So the cornerback here, he's going to want to force this guy inside. So let's say the cornerback, let's move him. Let's say he's aligned here, right? He's matched up on him. He has a zone that's going to be out here. Regardless of where he ends up, when this guy gets out of his break and the play begins, he's trying to, this defender, this cornerback, and this guy too, he's trying to force these receivers inside. Not let him get on the outside, because that makes it harder for this guy to make a play. Because this guy's got to run however many yards that is, versus inside versus outside, right? So this guy is going to have a lot easier time getting to the ball if it goes here, instead of this guy goes all the way on the outside, and you know he has to make it all the way, maybe an extra 5 yards. That could be the difference between catching and breaking up a pass, right? So that is the idea, the basic idea behind what cornerbacks want to do, right from the jump, right? They want to force that receiver. They want to force that receiver to the inside. So now let's get into the sections of the field which each guy is supposed to go to. In a cover 2 scheme, these safeties, like we talked about earlier, they're responsible for half of the deep areas, right? Half of the field in the deep areas, sorry. And now let's move to the cornerbacks. Usually people think this is the most simple and basic way to remember cover 2 is we're going to have the middle linebacker, this guy right here. He is going to get the hook zone, right? So what he's going to do is he's going to be in this middle zone right here. This is his zone, right? And he might drop back a bit right here, right? The weak side linebacker, his zone, it's going to be right out here. It's almost where they are standing, but they have a lot more area on a real football field to cover, right? Strong side linebacker, he's probably going to be out here, right? These are going to be their zones, right? So this zone right here is called a hook curl zone. He's going to work from the Mike linebacker. He's going to work from the hook to the curl, this area right here. The weak side linebacker, he's going to be in a he's going to be in a hook curl zone as well, or sorry, a curl flat zone, which means he's going to work through the curl to the flat. So is this guy, he's going to work from the curl to the flat, which is this area. This cornerback, he's going out here, and so is this guy. He's going out here. These are called the flats of the field. So we got safeties too high, right? We've got cornerbacks hitting the flats, and we've got these guys who, it's pretty self-explanatory once you look at the alignment. They're basically staying in a zone, which basically is around where they are standing. Now, the most common misconception is that is it. That is all there is there. That is all there is to know about cover two. That's all you got to make sure you understand before you go and try it out on the field. Now, that's not true, because what happens is when this guy does go deep and this guy can't get there fast enough, and this guy is way faster than your safety, you're going to get burned in cover two. And it's not to say like it shouldn't be the case. The situation should not be that if you're playing cover two, you have to be ready to get burned on the deep balls going on the outsides, right? That should not be the case. What should be the case is that if you know how to play cover two correctly, you can prevent those weaknesses from being exploited even when you're in a scheme such as cover two. And we're going to talk about that today as well. So, we cover where each guy on the defensive side of the ball is supposed to be in cover two, right? We got the flats, we got these 3 zones inside, and we got these 2 zones deep for the safeties. So we're going to talk about 3 scenarios in which a deep ball can occur and how we can prevent it through correct communication and execution on the field. So in football, let's say, you label a receiver from a defensive perspective, you label a receiver counting from the outside in with a number, right? So you go 1, 2, this receiver is number 2. Outside in, so this guy, he's number 1, right, on this side. You come from this side, you go 1. This guy's number 2, right? So you talk about the 2 receiver and the 1 receiver on each side, because we're talking about a simple alignment here, 2 by 2. Again, we talked about that earlier in the video. Let's draw up a scenario. So let me erase this stuff. Oops, just erased player right here. We're gonna erase these zones. Don't have my eraser with me today, guys. Sorry about that. This might take a bit longer. And I'll keep the names on here in case it might get confusing. Who's who when we talk about when preventing the deep ball, whose job it is, the Mike, the Sam, the Will. So all right. Yeah, okay. So let's begin with the very first scenario, right? The main thing, if you're going to take away anything from this, is that obviously understand the zones, but going a little bit further than that, the cornerback's only job, these guys' only job, is not just to cover the flats. They got a bit more responsibility, and that's where communication comes in, right? Let's talk about the simplest scenario. Let's say the number 2 receiver, right? This is going to be their read. This is going to be the key to figuring out what they do. If this guy, he has an out breaking route, right? So he goes up and out. What's going to happen is these guys are going to read that, and they're going to hit the flat, right? Like they're supposed to. Then they have the flat. They have the flat. Obviously, they make sure when this guy gets off his break, if he's going deep, like let's say this guy's going out, this guy's going deep, right? They jam him inside. They force him to the inside of the field, so it's easier for their safety here, right? And then they hit that flat right here. because the number 2 receiver is breaking out. Same thing on this side, right? Let's say it's number 2 is going out and number 1's trying to go up, right? So here's your deep ball, right? Here's your deep route. This guy's trying to run straight up the field. How are you going to prevent that? Well, when you hit the flat, because they've jammed him inside, number 1, this safety's going to have an easier time getting over there, right? So that's how it's going to work with communication, right? That's the time when they do have the flat, or one of the times, right? Now, let's say the number 2 that we just talked about right here, that had the original out-breaking route, let's say he goes up as well. This guy goes deep. Number 1 goes deep. Same thing on this side. Let's say they got 4 deep, right? Now you got a problem. You got 2 guys deep, and you got 4 offensive guys going deep. I mean, the QB is just going to have a field day. He can pick anyone who's open, and it's probably going to be caught. So what we have to do to prevent this is that the number 1, he is going to read number 2. If number 2 makes an inside move, because he wants to get in, he's going to be going up straight, right? If number 2 makes an inside move, then what's going to happen is the cornerback, he's going to go up with him. So if number 2 goes up, the cornerback, he's going to kind of slide with number 1, and number 2 is going to pick up, or the safety is going to pick up number 2 inside. So this guy's going to meet him here, so that he doesn't have to run all the way to the other side of the field, right? Or to the boundary. And this cornerback, instead of going down here, right? Or I'll make this dotted, because that's not what he's doing. Instead of going down here, he's sliding up with him. We understand that? So if both these guys are going deep, this cornerback, instead of hitting the flat, he's not going to the flat. He's gonna follow this receiver. He's basically playing man now. This is his guy. This is his guy to guard. So that's how that would work when they send extra guys deep, right? You're gonna have the cornerback going. And look, if you had, 2 guys going deep on one side, and you have, let's say this number 2, he breaks out. This stays the same. This cornerback's gonna go to the flat right here, because this guy, he's going outside. This cornerback, he's gonna go to the flat, right? So this is gonna be the same. It's when you got 2 guys going deep, you gotta follow that principle where the cornerback kind of follows. Then our last scenario, and I really want to stress this because, not the last scenario, the fact that the cornerback does not always play the flat. Because the basic understanding of cover 2 is you got 2 safeties deep, you got 5 guys inside. These Mike and Will and Sam, we'll talk about their jobs too. And the quarterback always goes to the flat. Well, that's not true, because it depends on the play that's going on, right? We got one more situation, and that's going to be, we talked about how if the 2 goes shallow, right, and the 1 goes deep, 2 goes shallow, the 1 goes deep. We also talked about if the 2 goes deep and the 1 goes deep as well. We did not talk about if the 1 goes shallow and the 2 goes deep, right? This is what's going to happen. It's very interesting, actually. So again, number two is always the key for these cornerbacks, right? Because they're the most vital piece. Got to communicate, got to make sure these guys are in the right positions, these cornerbacks. Then everything will gel together, hopefully. If number 2 goes deep, right, But number one, this guy should really be outside actually. If number two goes deep and number one, let's say he runs like a simple curl or let's say a hitch route, right? Let's say he runs a little 5-yard hitch, maybe 7-yard hitch. And two goes deep. What one is going to do is he is actually gonna slide to two, right? And he's gonna try to force him inside as he slides, right? This guy. Same thing on the other side. He's gonna slide to two. Now you might be saying, all right, that doesn't make any sense because now we've got the two receiver covered, but the safety could have done that, and the one is wide open. Well, first things first, let's say the safety couldn't get there. Well, we got that covered now because our cornerback's on number two, right? So it's kind of extra help, forcing this guy inside while he's running with him. It's almost like a double team. These guys are almost, if you choose to, you can basically double team, or the safety can kind of stay more central and leave the cornerback to deal with this deep route alone. And you might ask, what's going to happen to the two wide open guys, number one receivers on each side? In this concept, the weak side linebacker, he's going to be notified, depending on, some teams use different words to call it out. You might just yell out the route. You might yell slide. It really depends. I've heard some teams use China, right? Whatever the code word is, this cornerback, he's going to call it out. He's mid-play. He's going to yell it out. And when he does that, when he slides, that's going to notify, that's going to signal, that code word is going to notify this weak side linebacker, this strong side linebacker, to slide to this hitch route. And these guys are going to have the flats now. Weak side, strong side, right? And we don't got to worry about the inside anymore because this guy, he's hitching. These number twos are going deep. So, if both these guys are going deep, then we don't have any need for these wasted defenders inside. And again, the safeties are going to they're going to backtrack. They're going to get depth, right? Keep everything in front of them. That's the main thing for the safeties. They don't want to have anything going behind them, because when something goes behind them and they got to turn around and turn their back on the play, that's never good, because that means you're running one from behind, two, you don't have your eyes on the quarterback, so the quarterback can escape. All kinds of things can happen. This running back, he can run, a little angle route, he can run a wheel route, and the safeties are never going to see it coming, especially since now you got two of your linebackers that haven't come in, that aren't in the middle zones. Main thing for the strong side linebacker, he's usually going to, he's strong side, so that means he's on the heavier side of the field, which means where there's more people. Basically, since we have a 2x2, everything's the same. Again, we have 5, so everything is equal except for the running back in terms of numbers, how many people are on each side. So since the running back's on the right, this side is called the strong side. So usually talk about it in a defensive perspective. From a defensive perspective, it's strong left, because this is the left side of the defense, right? When you look at it from a defensive standpoint. So this is your strong side linebacker. He's lined up across the running back. He's going to check to make sure this guy isn't going off on any route, right? And as long as he's not, he's going to slide over. If he is, then the Mike linebacker, he'd probably say something to the Mike linebacker mid-play, call something out for that, and the Mike will check to, let's say this guy was running an option, and this was a part of his zone, like he's coming through his zone. He's going to notify, the Sam's going to notify the Mike, and he's going to pick up on the running back. And it's going to basically be man coverage from there. It's basically going to be a matchup, so middle linebacker versus running back. So that's how you pick everyone up on cover 2. For the most part, pretty much for the most part, from the previous 2 scenarios that we talked about, everyone going deep and the 2s going going shallow, right, and the one's going deep. For both those situations, the Wills, the Sams, they're going to basically stay in their zone, and so is the Mike. The Mike's probably going to drop a bit further back just to get a better, holistic view of the play. See anything maybe coming underneath, like we talked about a running back, to kind of break on it, to maybe when the ball is thrown, this guy coming in, he's going to break on it. But that is basically what's going to happen in a cover 2 scheme, and how to prevent deep balls in a cover 2 scheme, how to prevent that weakness from being exploited. Because cover 2 is basically known for being strong in the intermediate levels, like we talked about, because we've got 2 cornerbacks usually playing the flat, and we got the Will, the Mike, and the Sam in a 4-3 defense. But it's also known for being vulnerable to the deep outside levels, right? We might have a video soon on an actual play that occurred in the NFL where cover 2 was used, and it was used successfully against a deep ball to the outside. So yeah, we might have a video on that soon. But that's basically what I wanted to stress: how to prevent the deep balls on the outside, how to prevent the weakness from being exploited, and the basic principles of cover 2, where everyone's supposed to be, right? The job of the cornerbacks, the job of the safeties, the job of the Mikes, the Wills, and the Sam. Also remember that the cornerbacks are trying to shrink the field, they're trying to narrow it, because safeties, they got a hard job to cover each half, right? Both halves. Or I should say their own half. Sorry, bit confusing there. Their own half. It's still hard, to get from boundary to the middle. Try to make it a bit easier. The cornerbacks got to force their guys inside and not let them get on the outside. One more thing, the Will and the Sam, when these number 2s release deep, they don't want to let them just run free. Because let's say this guy is pretty fast. Let's say the number 2s are pretty fast. The Will and the Sam, they've got to kind of jam them here. Just like the cornerback is trying to force this guy inside, they're trying to almost reroute these guys. What reroute means is basically either make these guys stop on their route because they're going to run into this guy, right? Or make them almost curve their route. So I gotta clean this up a bit to make it a bit more clear. This guy, they want to reroute him. So like I said, make him stop, because that throws off the timing of the throw and everything, right? They want to make him stop and help their safeties get over there, because if they in the case they have to cover this deep ball right here, right? They're trying to make it as difficult as possible for the offense. They got to jam them, right here, make physical contact with them, and it would be, or at least make them go around, right? So maybe you got to go around them because they're obstructing. They're right here, right? So this guy, instead of going straight up, he's got to go around and go back up. And that's going to throw off the timing as well. So, yeah, I mean, guys, those are the main principles of cover 2. Main way you want to play it, how you should react to different scenarios, how cover 2 is played in general. Whether it's the short, shallow throws to the flats, to the curl zones, the hook zones, inside here with the linebackers, or the deep balls to the boundaries. That's how you should play cover 2, how it should be played. Right before we go, one more thing is almost like a variation of cover 2. You might think, well, how are you going to explain this super quickly? You said right before we go. It's really not that hard to understand. It's pretty simple. It's called cover 2 invert, and intuitively, you might, be thinking ahead and think that cover 2 invert is basically the opposite of cover 2. Because it's inverted, right? How are you going to play cover 2 if it's almost like the opposite? Well, it's not the opposite, you're switching roles. The cornerback, instead of doing all the jobs that we just talked about. He's basically going to play the role of the safety. The safety's going to play the role of the cornerback. The linebacker's going to have the same thing, so let's just forget about them for the sake of explaining cover 2 invert. So pre-snap, you're going to have this look before the ball is snapped, before the QB gets the ball, before the play starts. But almost right before it happens, or as the ball is being snapped, the cornerback's going to kind of move up here. This guy's going to creep down here. Same thing on this side. He's going to creep up here. And now the safety basically has the responsibility that the cornerback would have. Number 2 goes out, he's covering the flat. If both are going deep, right, the safety is going to run with number 1, and this guy, he's going to kind of be with number 2. And if number 1 is being shallow, he's running maybe like that hitch that we talked about. Number 2 is going deep. Then this cornerback, once he's up here, he's going to turn, he's going to realize he's got to run with number 2. And the safety that's come down, he might be right here, and then kind of work back to the inside to run with number 2 as well. Again, notify the Sam, so he runs out here to the hitch. Same thing over here. So that's cover 2 invert. The roles and positions are basically inverted. The safety has the job or responsibility of the cornerback. Post snap, it's a different look, and vice versa. So the cornerback has the role of the safety. Yeah, I mean that's basically it for cover 2. We might get into an example in another video, a later video down the road. But for now, those are basically the main points of cover 2 zone coverage. Again, we got 2 deep, just to recap, 5 in the middle, so that means we're good in the intermediate zones, we're vulnerable up here, but we talked about how to cover the deep balls, whether it's both players going deep on the outside, number 1's going shallow and number 2's going deep, or number 2's going shallow, maybe on an out route, something like that, and the 1's going deep. Talked about how to cover that, everyone's responsibility. And yeah, that's just a page from the playbook, right? That's just a page from the playbook. I'll see you guys next time.